The score on a math test is normally distributed with a mean of 640 points with a standard deviation of 30 points. Draw the normal curve representing the scores that are 1, 2, and 3 standard deviations above and below the mean, and answer the following questions. Alright, so we'll get to the questions later in a little bit. Let's just draw the normal curve first. Okay, so we got a curve, looks a little bit something like this. Okay, it's called a bell-shaped curve, just because of the way that it looks, right? A little bit of a bell. Okay, we also know that this is symmetric, right? So right down the middle, okay, this is where the mean is, right? It's also the median and the mode. Okay, so this is going to be 640, right? Think about what that means, right? It means half the students scored less than 640 and half the students scored greater than 640. Okay, so this curve sort of represents the area, but it's also the percentages. Okay, so that's the great thing about the normal distribution. Now, when it says that the standard deviation is 30 points, okay, that means when we go up one standard deviation, okay, if we add 30 to the score, we get 670. And if you go one standard deviation below, it is going to be 610. Okay. Now, what we know about being one standard deviation away, okay, it means that this middle part here is 68% of all data values. So that means that 68% of the students scored between 610 and 670. Right? So that's the application we can use from the standard deviation. Right? So this is one standard deviation away. That's the middle 68%. When we go two standard deviations, okay, so that's another score of 30, right? So that's going to be 580 below. And then when we add 30 to this guy, we're going to be at 700. Okay, so this is two standard deviations away. Okay, and that is going to be the 95%. Okay, so when we go between the blue marks here, right, this is going to be the middle 95%. Very important. It's not the lowest, the bottom 95 or the top 95, right? It's the middle 95. Okay. Let's think about what that means. Okay, it means that, remember, this is the middle 95, and this is also symmetrical. Okay, so that means there's 5% remaining, but then we have to split that evenly. So that means 2.5% scored less than 580, and 2.5% scored greater than 700. Okay, so when we go three standard deviations, right? Three standard deviations, we'll score that at 550, and then we'll score this at 730 here. Okay, so three standard deviations, and I'm sort of going into the writing here, right? But that's 99.7%. That's going to be 99.7% of all the data values. Okay, so that's being three standard deviations away from the mean, right? That's like almost everybody, right? But at the same time, what does it mean if you scored above 730, right? Then you're in essentially the top 0.15%. Okay, so you're using the ideas of the rule of 68, 95, 99.7, and also understanding that this is a symmetric on each side, okay, we should be able to answer these questions. Okay, so first question, what percent of students scored between 610 and 640? Well, we see the 610 here and the 640 here. Okay, so what is that answer going to be? Well, if you take a look, this is the middle 68%, and we know that these are split evenly. So the answer here for part I should be half of 68, which is 34%. Okay, what percent of students scored higher than 670? Okay, well, here's the 670 mark, right? And we want to get the percentage that is above 670. Well, you got to be careful with this, right? How are we going to figure that part out, right? Strictly above 670. Well, we know that each of these parts here are 34%, right? Because this is the middle part. Okay, so 34% here, 34% here. But we also know that this is the halfway point, right? So 50% of the data values are below this. So in order to answer part 2 here, the percent of students scored up higher than 670, we're going to take the 50%, here, plus the 34% here. Okay, so this is going to be 84%, right? But remember, that's 84% who scored lower than 670. So then the 100 minus 84, that's going to give us 16%. Okay. And what about the last part here? Okay, what percent of students scored higher than 580? Okay, well, 580 mark is right here. Okay. And similarly, we want the percentage that is higher than that. Okay. Well, we can use this middle 95%, right? We know that from here to here, these blue lines, right? That's the middle 95%. So we know that this part here is going to be 2.5%. Okay. So there's 2.5% that scored less than 580, which means then that 100 minus 2.5 is 97.5, right? So that is the percentage of students who scored higher than 580.